Howdy, folks. How is everyone today? Howdy, Evgeny.
Howdy,
Lighty
y'all.
looking
Is that what you
fabulous.
say?
Y'all, I don't know. I mean, I'm English, so your guess is as good as mine. Um,
Beautiful.
right, so folks, so I can see Timothy has arrived. Hi, Timothy. Thank you for asking a couple of questions already. I just want to make sure that everybody can actually hear us. So, Timothy, if you would, or maybe someone else, just drop us a little note just to confirm that you can hear us. We're also streaming on LinkedIn. So, if anyone is there on LinkedIn and you can hear us, I should actually just open up LinkedIn as well. Do say hi, and then we know that everyone can hear us and that we are good to go. So, Timothy
We're
or
also on
somebody else want to
X,
say hi?
people. We're also on X. If you're listening to us on X, give us a shout. I know that the stream is live. I can see it on my account.
Cool. Does anyone actually call it X? I am not an X user and have never really been an X, formerly known as Twitter user. Do
No
people
one.
call it X or is it still everyone just calling it Twitter?
It's Twitter. It's Twitter. Like no, everyone. It's like I don't know. Like just saying, oh, where I posted it on X. Ugh. I don't
It's
understand
kind
that.
of strange. It doesn't really kind of roll off the tongue very
No.
comfortably, does it?
Not that Twitter is to my kind of tongue, my English as a second language education is friendly. X is friendlier, but in terms of a social network, Twitter, at least it's something. X, who knows what that is?
I don't know. I
But
just think
yes, we're
the
an
alli-
X as well.
the alliteration of Twitter just makes it, I don't know, I find X a bit kind of uncomfortable. It feels incomplete to me because it's just like
Mm.
an out breath without, it's like a cough.
Yeah, I know. It's like X something, right?
Yeah,
Like you almost
exactly.
like want to add something there.
It
Yeah, I
feels
agree.
incomplete. All right, folks. So now we've had an existential conversation about Elon Musk's branding choices. Um, it looks
We've
like
got absolutely nothing to do, by the way, folks. This is what this is about. In case you came here thinking there's going to be free interview coaching, but alas.
alas, not existential conversations about Elon Musk and his branding choices. Right, folks. So it looks like everybody can. Oh, right. Timothy's saying that I've heard X, formerly known as Twitter, more than either. Yeah, I think so too. And I'm assuming everyone else gets that reference, right? Everyone understands that it's a Prince reference, or is that just a Gen X that would understand that it's a Prince reference? And am I just showing my age?
But you know what? I think it's pretty safe because even if you don't know where the actual reference belongs, you'll still get it, right?
Get it? It's true. It's true. And now everyone knows that I'm old as, I was going to swear, but I'm not going to do that because that's very English, but not very PC. Alrighty, folks. So why don't we just get going? It takes folks a while to rock up, so we'll just give you our intro spiel, and then hopefully by that time, a few more people have rocked up. We can have a few more questions, and we can get going. So brief intros then. So obviously, I am Gigi, and this is the gorgeous Yevgeny, and we are the co-founders of Day One Careers. Just to give you a little bit, God, I sounded like my daughter there. I dropped my T's, slap my hand there, a little bit of an introduction into who we are and what we do. So I was previously an Amazon senior leader, and you probably also know a bar raiser at Amazon. I spent 5 years hiring my own team. I was an L7, so hiring my own team, and also obviously extensively interviewing for lots of other teams around me at Amazon, and of course as a bar raiser. In my time there, while I was bar raising, and I was probably doing up to 3 or 4 interviews a week, actually, which is quite a lot. I started to spot candidates doing some really weird things, to be honest with you. And after picking up a few of these repeat weird things, I just decided to ask candidates why they were doing this, and then heard about this whole world of YouTube, where there was apparently content about how you prepare for an Amazon interview. So, being the good Amazonian that I was, learn and be curious, I did a little bit of digging around and found a couple of channels here. But at the time, some of it was just diabolical, horrible, horrible, horrible advice, which really upset me because there is nothing worse than giving people bad advice. You're better off to have no advice than bad advice. So I started up my own little YouTube channel on the side whilst I was still working at Amazon. Roll forward a couple of years, I left Amazon, but I decided I would keep going with this little, let's call it a side hustle, built my own little business, started selling courses and doing coaching for Amazon interview preparation, and then crossed paths with the gorgeous Yevgeny, who was doing something very similar. The two of us decided we were better as partners than as competitors. So we joined forces, we created Day One Careers, or should I say, we molded our businesses together to create a new version of Day One Careers. And here we are providing tons of free content for you folks on YouTube. We've got this amazing blog that Yevgeny has done an amazing job of orchestrating on our website. And also, we do a whole bunch of digital courses and one on one interviewing for candidates preparing. So, with that said, then, why don't we just talk about how things are going to play out today, and then we can get going with questions. Just so that you know, Evgeny, there's no chicken dinner tonight. In case you were concerned, I've no chicken in the oven tonight. Mr. G is on hot dog duty tonight.
Ooh.
Everyone's going to think that's super weird, but if you've been here a few times, you'll understand the reference. So the way this works is you folks get to ask us any questions that you like about your impending Amazon interview, or maybe your post Amazon interview position. There are some caveats, however. If your question is very specific to your job family skill set and you want to know something about the functional nature of your role, be it kind of a technical role if you're a dev, or if you are in legal, etc., and you want to know something about the functional side, chances are we're not going to be able to answer that question. There are tens of thousands of job families in Amazon. We, and no one else, quite frankly, can be functional experts in all 10,000 of them. Feel free to ask it, but we will probably tell you that we can't answer it. On the other side, if you have a very generic and general, hi, I'm preparing for my Amazon interview, can you give me any tips? Clearly, we could spend like 20 hours just talking to you with our tips, and we're not going to do that because that's what the YouTube channel is all about. So if you just want a generic, can you give me some tips? Can you help me out? Please just head to the YouTube channel first. And then if you do come up with specific questions, you can either come back here again this time next week, because we are here every single week, or you can pop a little question in the comment section of the video that you're looking at the YouTube channel, and I will come back to you and answer that question. So I think that's it. Folks, all you need to do is write your questions here on the right-hand side of the page, or if you are on LinkedIn, you can just pop them in the comment section on the event stream, and we will pick them out and attempt to answer them. Does that cover everything, Evgeny?
Covered everything and then some. So we
Thing, just
look.
remembered. Stay to the end, folks. We have an amazing giveaway. Best giveaway you'll get on Amazon interview preparation on the web, I guarantee you. Right, so you want to kick it off, Yevgeny, and see if you can find our first question?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, Timothy is here. I think so. We'll just start with Timothy. So, what if during my interview, questions are phrased in a way that doesn't directly match the story I prepared for a certain LP? Do I try to make the story more dynamic to fit depending on how they ask? So, my method would be that if you think that your story is thereabouts, or if you think by, I guess, including or excluding some detail, you can thereabouts answer the question. And specifically, I guess, for me, the most important thing is like every question is probing for a specific set of behaviors. So if you think that the story that you've prepared that doesn't match the question, maybe specifically, or maybe the specific context is missing, but you can kind of mold it in a way that the actual behaviors that they're looking for in that question they're shining through the story, then as you say, you would you can tell it dynamically. And it's plenty of situations, and for example our coaching sessions as well, where candidates come with stories that were prepared for the same LP but just different question. It is possible to adjust the story. However, if your story is about something completely different, say maybe the question is about solving complex problems and your story is, well, there's nothing about complex problems in that story, unless in reality the problem that you were solving was complex. You'd struggle to mold it. So if you think that you completely just don't have the content done, and you've clarified the question and you definitely understand what you're being asked, but you just don't have the content, then just tell the interviewer that unfortunately this particular professional context, you don't have it. Maybe they can ask you a different question. What would you recommend, Gigi?
Yeah, so broadly the same thing in terms of in the actual moment of the interview. If you have a slightly similar question, you can answer, you can say to the interviewer, my answer isn't quite, I think, what you're looking for, but I think I have something similar. Can I explain it to you? And then just explain it to the interviewer in a few lines and ask them if it's okay to use that example. Otherwise, your advice, absolutely, I would agree with it. What I would say is going into interview, the final part of your interview preparation, I feel, should be practicing that agility in the moment. So, what I coach candidates, and I know Yevgeny does the same, is once you have your set of stories prepared that you want to tell, then what you want to do is practice dynamically adapting that story. So, go grab behavioral interview questions. Obviously, not obviously, we will give you a whole set that you can use to practice with, but there are others on the web. Now, that's not to say that what's on the web is actually accurate, but they will do in terms of just practice. So, what we'd suggest is form your original stories, and then the final phase of your preparation should be practicing how would I adapt this story if I was asked a specific question that I hadn't necessarily built this story for. And that's the final kind of 10-15% of anyone's interview preparation, that training your brain to be agile and dynamic in the moment.
And if by the way, folks, if you stay but until the end of the session when we give away our freebies, one of those freebies will directly help you practice. So just stay with us.
Cool. Okay. So will I pick the next question? Moving on. Okay. Oh, okay. Hmm. This is interesting. Okay, yeah. So, M, not her. So, can we give tips on the assessment call simulation during loop stage with one of the interviewers where I will act as an account manager and the Amazonian will act as a vendor? So, M, not her, I'm afraid this falls into the category of questions that I said at the very beginning we could not answer. So, you're asking me a very specific functional question about a functional part of the interview process for an account manager. This is not my area of subject matter expertise, nor Yevgeny's. We very much cover off the behavioral side of things. So this is just to say, I'm not ignoring you, but no, we don't have this level of knowledge for account management in the same way that we couldn't tell you exactly what a software development engineer would get from a functional point of view, or legal counsel, or acoustics manager, or real estate manager, or solutions architect, or network engineer, or blah, 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 blah. So I'm sorry to disappoint you, but no, this isn't something that we can specifically help you with.
You
Okay.
know a lot of these functional areas. See, that's the bar raiser for you people.
Ah, so
Former.
many, so many. Right. So let me just, sorry, Evgeny, I'll pick another question because that one was a little bit of a cop out. Um, okay, right.
This one is a
So
cop out as well.
Timothy, no, it's not. You're so mean. All right. So you asked the recruiter about the LPs to focus on. Excellent. And she was happy to send me the 8. Brilliant. That will be covered. Right. So 8 is quite a small number, Timothy. So I'm going to assume that you are interviewing for maybe an L5 level role, which means you've got 4 interviewers, which means 2 each, and that equals the 8. But okay, you don't have much time should you only focus on those, right? So I would say yes, Timothy. If your recruiter has gone and given you the specific 8 that they believe you should focus on, then I think you're pretty safe to assume that they are not giving you inaccurate information. The recruiter is very much invested in your success. If you succeed, they succeed. So I don't think we have any reason to believe that your recruiter would send you down the wrong alley. So I would definitely say focus on those 8. The only thing that I will just add is in case those 8 don't include customer obsession, dive deep, or deliver results, if any of those are missing from the 8 that your recruiter gave you, I would personally still be prepared with a story for each of those 3, because these are fundamental leadership principles that Amazon will always want to be convinced that someone is maybe not raising the bar, because you don't have to raise the bar on every leadership principle, but certainly not below bar on any of those. There you go. I don't feel that was a cop out, Yevgeny, so I'm going to pass it back to you.
All right. Cool. So, okay, here's the next one. I have the final loop round in a couple of days for the BA role. Do they ask about situation-based questions, like what would you do if there is a product launch and something like that? So, um, normally, if everything goes to plan and your interviewers have gone through their behavioral interview training at Amazon and everything essentially works out as it does in 95, 90 to 99% of all interview scenarios, then they shouldn't ask you any hypotheticals, right? Situation-based questions is I read it as a more advanced, sort of more complex way of asking hypothetical questions. Imagine these are your inputs, this is your situation, what would you do? So in loops, unless there is a specific necessity to test some functional skills for some roles, and I have no idea what these roles would be, by the way, it would be extremely unlikely for them to do this. I've never encountered anything like this for non-technical loops, but even for technical loops or highly technical, non-technical, highly sort of data heavy, non-technical roles, behavioral questions would it's incredibly unlikely that you would encounter anything like this. So that's what I would say. Gigi, would you have a different opinion?
So this is a BA business analyst role. So I can certainly see a scenario for a business analyst where they would want to probe your functional expertise. So if you, as part of this role, need to work with like Redshift or something along those lines, you might be asked questions about managing data pipelines in Redshift, et cetera, et cetera. So they might ask you, how would you do this technical thing? Which is a very specific technical question to understand your knowledge of that particular tool or space. To Yevgeny's point, I don't see them asking kind of somewhat more generic hypothetical questions as you've described here. What would you do if there was a product launch? Blah, blah, blah. Um, that shouldn't happen. So it's either going to be, tell me about a time where you had a product launch that what required you to do an enormous amount of analysis in preparation for it. And that's a dive deep behavioral question. Or talk to me about Redshift, talk to me about your knowledge. How would you manage a data pipeline where there might be some error messages, blah, 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 blah. That said, folks, there's what should be done and then there's what is done. So all of the advice Yevgeny and I give you is based on best practice and what is the policies, the standard policies at Amazon as we currently understand them. That doesn't mean to say that every single interviewer is going to adhere to all of those policies and best practices 100%. So people inevitably come back to us when we give them advice and say, well, that didn't happen to me, this person did that. Sure, we can't account for edge cases where people are deciding to play Wild West. So this is our best advice of what should happen, but we are very confident that in all cases, what should happen is not what, no, in some cases, what should happen is not what happens. All right, shall I pick the next one then?
Please.
Oh, this is a how long is a piece of string question.
Ooh.
So, yeah, how much reasonable time one should spend preparing for a behavior around 40 to 60 hours. So I don't have a number actually, Evgeny. I don't know if you've ever found a way to calculate one because the problem is, Neeraj, everybody's different. So you might have someone who has zero experience in behavioral interviewing and is totally unprepared in any way, shape, or form, and they're going to need to spend a whole lot longer than someone who might have extensive experience in behavioral interviewing. And the Amazon interview is just one, is number 15 out of a list of potential 20 that they've been working through over the past 2 months. So I don't really have a way to measure that or tell you what the right answer is. When we sell our course, and the people who use our course, we always tell them that they need probably about a week and a half, isn't it, Yevgeny, to
Yeah.
go through
Yeah.
all of our course materials and be prepared. That's specific to our course materials. It's not specific to the actual individual themselves and how long one should prepare. It's kind of like asking how many hours should preparation should one put in for an exam. Kind of depends, doesn't it, on how good you are on the subject. Have you got any other thoughts on top of that, Yevgeny? Because I appreciate that's rather ambiguous.
No, and to be honest, you're right. Our recommendation, our recommendation is based on our course material, our paid courses, and we kind of worked in the whole idea that your preparation with paid resources like ours, it's gonna consume more time of your day. That's for sure. And if you do watch the courses, complete the worksheets, and build your stories, and then check your stories with our AI systems and all that, that time kind of tends to add up. But if you're, for example, just preparing completely solo, is it possible that you need less time or fewer days? Probably, but then it depends on like how many other resources you will be using. Like when I was preparing for my interview loops, and in fact for my Apple loops, about a week and a half is what I took, and I used various different resources and prep materials and practice. So it also depends on like how granular, how passionate are you about the prep. You know, when Apple called me from Amazon, I just sidelined everything and I just dove into it, and my wife never saw me for a week and a half while I was prepping. So it kind of depends on your ambition there as well. Yeah, Raj.
Okay, your turn. Want to pick another one?
Yeah, cool. So here's one from. Did you cover this or
No, M not her asked a very similar question further up, and it's the same answer. We can't answer this
Okay,
because
fine.
we
So
can't be subject matter experts in everything.
okay, cool. Cool. So I'm just gonna keep
Pick
it. Okay.
Timothy, who's below.
Okay, cool. How to best anticipate how they will press the flesh with my
Yeah, I
story?
think that's my terminology. I think Timothy's been watching one of my videos where I use the term press the flesh, which I find is a really, really creepy term, but I picked it up from my ex-manager at Amazon who used to talk about press the flesh all the time, and it's obviously stuck with me. But yeah,
Yes, yes,
creepy.
with a
Sorry.
soldering unit or whatever.
Yeah, it's
Anyway,
creepy. I'm really sorry. That's Russell's fault.
I love it. Right. So we're talking about follow-ups and drill downs. And I guess how to best anticipate how they will press the flesh. So look, really depends on the interviewer. Like I've been in loops, and I'm sure Gigi will, she'll have many different stories as well to tell of folks not pressing you at all. You literally just go through your story. They say, uh, I don't have any more questions. Do you have any questions? You ask some questions. Your interview is done. You're on to the next interviewer. Then, on the other hand, you might have folks who will go really, really, really granular and will be asking you what questions, why questions, what for questions, trying to press, understand why you did what you did. What's the method to the madness, right? How you thought about your actions, what sort of assumptions you had. So I think if an interviewer is well trained and passionate and committed to the actual, I guess, task of being an interviewer in a corporate environment like Amazon, they will be pressing you on why, what for, and probably other questions around why you did what you did, what you thought, how you made choices and trade-offs, what would you have done differently. So those types of questions, you should anticipate. I don't think it's possible to prepare for all of them. Just expect that the level of questioning might vary from absolutely nothing to just full on double click, double click, double click, unpeel the layer of why to the nth degree. What would you recommend, Gigi?
I usually suggest that people get other people to come up with follow-up questions because although they might not be the follow-up questions that your interviewer asks you, it at least gets you thinking about what are the gaps in my story. So I would suggest, Timothy, find a friend, join our community. And again, we'll tell you how to do that at the end of the session, and buddy up with someone and see if they can come up with some follow-up questions that if they heard your story, that they would be tempted to ask. And you might think that's a brilliant follow-up question. I'm sure they'll ask something like that. And then at least you've got the answer in your back pocket. Or you might be thinking, well, I don't think they're ever going to ask that question, but it might just inspire you but they might ask this type of version of that question. Okay, cool. I'm going to pick the next one then, will I?
Please.
Honestly, it's so the lighting in this office is shocking. I say this every single time. You're always so perfectly lit, and I'm just struggling with blinding sun or stripes of like shutters. Anyway, okay. Oh, I know this is a two-parter. I've seen the other part, so I'll pick that out right. So, what does it mean if someone finished the loop but got an answer that they did well but won't be considered by the hiring manager on the loop? However, another hiring manager is interested, knowing that the second hiring manager is looking for the same role. Does that mean another loop is expected or something else? Okay. So it can vary. There's no hard and fast rules about how they then go about doing kind of a second process for a different role. If the second hiring manager, was already on the loop that you were part of the first time round that you were declined for, it may well be that actually they're just very happy and they're happy to take you on and you don't need to do any more interviewing. If they weren't part of that loop, it's very possible that they might want some kind of a follow up meeting with you and you might have one additional interview. If the role isn't exactly the same and this hiring manager is on a completely different team that is not actually connected to the team that you were interviewing for, you might find yourself going through the entire process all over again. So it's kind of impossible to know from our perspective because there are many options, and therefore the best person to ask is actually the recruiter. And just ask your recruiter, great, delighted that someone else is interested in me. Can you just let me know what would be the process for this second role?
Fair enough.
Right. Do you want to pick the next
Yeah.
one, Evgeny, whilst I once again mess around with the curtain?
Okay. So this one is from Ruth. Hi, Gigi and Evgeny. Thank you for your time. I'm at the final stage of the loop. I think it's a multi-parter as well, this one. Do you know how many questions each interviewer will ask? 2 to 3 questions per leadership principle. How many leadership principles per interview depends on the nature of your loop. If it's a full non-technical loop, it's typically 2 LPs per interview. If you're interviewing for a technical role, it could be less because it could be fewer LPs per interview because they would have to bake in
Hmm.
technical assessment in as well. Then your second part is I have tons of questions prepared tailored to each interviewer. For my hiring manager, I have up to 20 questions. How many questions do you think is enough to ask each interviewer? Wowza. So this is I'm guessing this is questions for you to ask at the end. Um, so how you want to structure this and what you want to do with these questions is entirely up to you. As long as these are questions that are genuine to you, um, and if all those questions, 12 per however many, I don't even know, is that 12 per interviewer or is it 12 in total? Even if it's 12 in total, if all these 12 questions are genuine, you're interested in knowing these things about Amazon, then how you kind of split them around and what questions do you use with whom, it's entirely up to you. I would approach this from again from as we always recommend, the questions that you ask and the types of questions you're asking doesn't go into the assessment of the strength of your interview. It's only if you don't ask questions at all, then it typically raises questions. So treat those as an opportunity for yourself. Be selfish, like literally ask them what's important to you. If you know the profile of your interviewers, you can tailor questions to someone who might know something, for example, based on their Amazon experience. We also know of candidates who have had exactly the same list of questions, and they were going and asking exactly the same questions to all interviewers because they wanted to collect different viewpoints, and then sort of triangulate. This was my strategy. I
Mm.
don't see anything wrong with your strategy. So, how many questions do I think is enough for each interviewer? It literally it depends. It's up to you, and also by the way, there will be some interviews where you think you have 3 questions to ask. In reality, you overrun massively. You have time to ask one. So
Yeah. So I was going to say that I think the biggest variable factor here is not how many you want to ask, but how much time there is left to ask them.
yeah,
So Yevgeny's point is really important. Stack rank the most important questions and then ask those ones first. Because sometimes I've had interviews and there's been a good 10 minutes left to answer the candidates' questions. Other times I've had interviews where literally I've only had time to let them ask one question because we've gone so long with the rest of it. So
yeah.
that's really the determining factor. So stack rank them, decide what you think is most important, then start at the top and work your way through until the clock runs out.
Cool. I think this is yeah. I think this is the final part of the two-parter.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to pick this one from David because we've already covered Timothy's. Oh, look, we've disappeared. Oh, actually, do you know what I'm going to do? Before I do this, David, I'm sorry, David. I'm going to put you back in. Sorry, 1 second. 1 second. So we're around halfway in terms of the amount of time that we have. And this is the point of the show, because of course this is a show. It's a really high quality production we've got going here, where I just ask you to pause momentarily and do us a favor in return for what we have done for you. As you can tell, a massive amount of work goes into this channel, and trust me, we consider it our privilege to be able to help you all out and support you in what is a really important and for some people absolute critical point in their lives. But we put in a lot of effort. So we're going to ask you for something in return. And that is that when you watch this stream, and indeed when you watch any of the content on our channel, that you engage with it. So what does engagement mean? Well, engagement means giving it a thumbs up, a like, or writing a little comment underneath the video. Thanks, Gigi. Thanks, Yevgeny. Love your hair, Gigi. Actually, no, don't say that because loads of people say mean things about what I look like in those videos. So don't comment on my because I just delete them anyway. But thank you, Gigi. That was helpful, Gigi. Anything, right? So just to show that you are actually engaged in the content. The reason why that's useful is it effectively tells YouTube that they've done 2 things well. Number one, this is really good content. And number two, that they're serving this content to the right people because otherwise they wouldn't like it and comment on it. And once that is triggered into the system, it basically just prioritizes day one careers content over other similar but nowhere near as good content on YouTube. And so other people in the same position as you will be able to see good quality, accurate, appropriate information about Amazon interview preparation. So to that end, I'm going to play you a little video for a few seconds. And in those few seconds, I will ask you to please either put a little comment under the stream or give us a little like. And I can see how many likes there are, folks. So I will be able to see if you don't do it, just so you know. So do it. Right, let's just give it a go. Which one will I choose this week? Okay, this one is a little bit loud, folks. So if you have headphones on, you might just want to take them off your ears. And I say this every time I use this one, and I tell myself that I will fix it, but I never do. So it's like telling my that problem in the kitchen, that thing you need to fix that you always tell yourself you're going to fix, and then you just never do. That's this video. All right, folks, just going to play it. Please do give us a thumbs up.
Please like the stream now. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream. 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 Like the stream.
I
Right,
love this one. This is
folks,
my favorite.
that's 30 seconds of your life you'll never get back.
Yes. And now it's down to the rest of your life.
Right. Here we go, David. Sorry to have made you wait. Okay. Okay, I know you can't give any specific information re specific professions. However, I wonder if there's a way to best shape my prep around the subject area of my expertise. I followed the 10-step interview from the YouTube channel, fine, but wondered if there's any resources available for favorite questions for given technical areas, blah, blah. Love the videos, by the way. Thank you. I'm glad you like them. Right. So no, I can't give you any specifics because we could be here forever. There are tens of thousands of job families across Amazon. And as I've said, we do not know the specifics of what everyone is going to be asking. And equally, there are no favorite questions, right? There's no kind of any way of actually gathering that data and analyzing it and working out what the top or favorite questions are asked by Amazon interviewers. The way that that data is captured, as I don't believe it's changed since we moved on, Yevgeny. So the way that data is captured, it's in free text. It's not mineable. I guess you could mine it if you scraped it all and did a huge piece of analysis on it, but they don't. So nobody knows what the top or favorite questions are on the behavioral side or on the technical side. And anyone who says they do know it is lying, and you send them my way, and I'll tell them they're lying. So I can't give you that information. But in terms of your question around if there's a way to best shape your prep around your subject area of your expertise, so, what we would recommend is you kind of think about your preparation on two dimensions. So, the first dimension is the leadership principles, and the second dimension is the functional areas of expertise required by your role. Because what you're going to need to try and do is through the course of your interview, both convince the interviewers that you are bar raising on the leadership principles, but also convince them that you have the functional skills that they're looking for. And the best way of doing that is to effectively come up with stories that effectively run the gamut of the key functional skills that they're looking for at the same time as addressing the leadership principles. So essentially, what I'm going to say to you is build yourself a little matrix with your functional across the Y, and you can do it either way, but the functional across the Y and the leadership principles across the Z, and then basically plonk your just some short titles for the stories that you want to use inside this matrix, and see if you've got holes. So if you've got holes around a particular functional space, but you've covered all of the leadership principles, you're going to need to think about another story to go into that functional space. And who cares what leadership principle it sits against? Or if you do that exercise and you've got holes in the leadership principles and they're leadership principles that you think are important, but you've got all the functional covered, you're going to need to plug that hole. So that's the way I would suggest, simply from a process mechanism point of view, that you go about trying to make sure that you have all of your bases covered off, both in terms of the leadership principles and in terms of the functional requirements of your role. How do you know the functional requirements? Look at the job description. Most job descriptions are adequate enough that they will talk about the functional requirements of the role. If you've got a bit of a crappy job description, which there are plenty of, you're going to have to somewhat use your own judgment. If it's your technical skills area already, chances are you kind of already know what the functional things you need to do in your job are. Any additional advice, Evgeny, that you would give?
Nope, very detailed.
All
Very
right. Speaking of
detailed.
details, next question is yours.
Yes, indeed. Gosh, we can do the newscast presentation with all these like roll-ins and all of. So how detailed should we be for each story? So there is the official guidance from Amazon, which you will find posted in their blog, and their guidance is give a lot of details, and then literally in the next sentence or in like the two sentences after, they say, but don't make sure your story doesn't exceed 4 minutes. So that's their official guidance. Our guidance is slightly more nuanced. So I'll tell you what our guidance is, then I'll explain to you why. So we believe that if you're interviewing for a junior role, naturally, um, the stories that you're going to be sharing, hopefully about various problems that you were solving, the problems themselves are not going to be superbly complex, which is normal, right? And that's why the stories that you would tell at L4, they usually don't require that much time. Whereas when the role that you're applying to grows in seniority, becomes L5, L6, L7, and upwards, then the stories that you will naturally tell your interviewer, they will be longer because you're going to be talking about problems that are more complex and they will take more time to communicate. Maybe you had more steps that you took, maybe the steps, there was more friction, whatever it is. And that's why we typically recommend to increase the length of your opening story. And when I say opening story, the story that you would have told if you could run it from start to finish, right, without any interjections or questions. So we believe that it needs to increase as the seniority of the role that you're applying for progresses. So our guidance is 4 to 5 minutes for L4, 5 to 6 for L5, 6 to 7 for an L6, and then it kind of goes. I wouldn't tell a story that's more than 8 minutes long. There's no need for that. And the reason why we recommend to adopt this sort of stage scale of the length of stories is because it kind of controls for um, a situation where your interviewer isn't great at interviewing. And I know, like, this is Amazon and folks go through interview training, but things happen, right? Like, you have humans everywhere. The original guidance from Amazon on 4 minutes, it assumes that everyone's trained in interviewing. It assumes that every interviewer will take their time following up with you, trying to tease out the details that are important to them, gather more evidence. But not everyone does that. And so we don't want you to be dependent on the quality of your interviewer as much as the 4 minute guidance assumes. So depends on what your role is, but anything between 4 to 8 minutes, depending on the level of your role. Anything you'd add, Gigi?
No, perfect. As with everything with you, Yevgeny.
Same to you. Is it touche, or is it a wrong thing to say
It's
touche?
the wrong thing. Touche would be if I said something incredibly witty that put you
Yes.
in your place.
See, English as a second language.
And that clearly never happens because I'm just not that witty. All right, so Timothy again. Timothy's got lots of questions. We love Timothy. Thank you for coming with all of these
Good
questions,
questions as well.
Timothy. Right. With pressing the flesh, are they on your side and trying to get more supporting evidence, or are they challenging you / trying to get you in a way? All right, Timothy. So the purpose of the follow-up questions, and again, this is about what policy is and what the actual kind of purpose is from an Amazon interview training point of view. The whole purpose of follow-up questions is to get the evidence that they need, right? The whole point of the actual interview that you're in, the purpose of the interviewer at that interview is just to gather data. In the actual interview itself, nobody is supposed to be making any decisions or drawing any conclusions or making any judgments about whether you are the right person for the role, or if they're going to move you on to the next stage, or if they're going to decide that they want to be inclined or not inclined for you. The whole purpose of the interview is just to gather data. And then they're just supposed to take that data away, and an hour later or 24 hours later, I think 24 hours is much better, but we could have a separate conversation about that, re-review their notes, emotionally distanced from the actual situation when they were interviewing you, and make a very logical and rational assessment of the data that they gathered. And it's at that follow-up session, when they're on their own at their laptop looking at their notes, that's when they're supposed to be making their decisions and coming to conclusions. So the whole point of follow-up questions is to gather more data. No one is supposed to catch you out. So here's the other part of the Amazon philosophy on interviewing. Your interviewer is meant to be on your side. The interviewer is there to try and help you succeed, as opposed to maybe other interview processes where it can be a little bit more combatant and your interviewer is there to judge you. That's not the nuance of an Amazon interview. Your interviewer is on your side. They want you to succeed, primarily because they don't want to interview anymore. Right? Interviewing takes up a massive amount of time at Amazon, less now than it used to, because obviously they're not growing in the way they were growing before. But nonetheless, interviewing is part of everybody's job. Unless you're pretty junior, most L5s and up are going to end up doing at least one interview a week. That's not their day job. That interviewing is not going to get them closer to their personal goals that have been set for them in their scorecards. Therefore, it's a distraction. Therefore, nobody wants to do it, really. Now, that doesn't mean to say they don't go into it with good spirit, but nonetheless, it is a distraction from their job. So essentially, every interviewer that comes into an interviewer desperately wants you to succeed, because they want you to be hired, because they want to not have to keep interviewing for this role so they can go back to their day jobs. So in theory, everybody is meant to be on your side. Now, that doesn't mean to say that if you say something that doesn't quite smell right, your interviewer won't latch onto it and try and uncover whether their suspicions that what you're saying is not perhaps the truth. They will do that because their job is to uncover the data about your ability to be functionally competent or leadership principle competent. So, yes, they're on your side, but that doesn't mean to say that they won't actively pursue threads where they feel they need to clarify and get confidence that what you're telling them is in fact true. The other thing they might also do is try and probe on the extent of your knowledge. So you might talk about a specific metric, you might talk about a specific skill or a process, and they might well be curious about the depth and the strength of your knowledge in that space. So they might ask you particular follow-up questions. That's not to catch you out. Nobody's trying to be kind of all evil genius, but they are trying to probe on just how strong or deep is this individual's knowledge. But you really should go into every single interview assuming best intentions. I think that's one of my biggest bugbears about some of these coaches on, let's say, LinkedIn, and they all seem to have kind of titles like interview ninja or career warrior or some kind of adjective that sounds combative. I don't know why. And the narrative that comes through those people is that it's some kind of a one-upmanship, combative process where your interviewer is trying to prove that you don't deserve the job and you're trying to prove how clever you are and you do deserve the job. I really hate that approach. It's just there to sell courses, right? You should go into an interview with best assumptions that the person on the other side of the table is on your side and wants you to win, and that everything that they're doing in the interview is done because they want you to succeed. I have nothing else to say on that one. Yevgeny, anything to add?
Nope. Highly detailed, as always. Okay. Well,
Right.
here is another question from Timothy.
Timothy's been
The-
saving them up.
Yeah. Okay. So, how to best anticipate the general non-LP questions? Should I spend 90% of my time on LP preparation? So, because you said general non-LP questions, I'm going to assume that you don't mean any functional or technical questions specifically related to your technical competencies, right? So I'm going to assume that by general, you mean things like, oh, tell me about yourself, or why do you want to work at Amazon, that sort of stuff. So those types of questions are typically reserved for your phone screens. During your phone screens, how much time they will take really depends on the ambitions and interests of your interviewer, because phone screens, they tend to be a catch-all type of an interview format. So if you think about your entire Amazon process, which is for, let's say, for a non-technical role, 1 or 2 phone screens plus a loop, then just the sheer amount of time that you will end up answering behavioral interview questions just will be a lot longer than what you will end up doing during your phone screens, answering why Amazon, tell me about yourself. So from that perspective, I don't know if the 90% number, the actual percentage, is correct, but the bulk of your preparation would have to be to answer behavioral interview questions based on the 16 leadership principles of Amazon. Now, for your phone screens, in order to pass your phone screens, I would say get the leadership principles that are important for this role from the recruiter. And or ask them directly, what leadership principles will I be interviewed during the phone screen? Some of them will tell you, some of them won't. And then prepare, if you can, prepare for those leadership principles for your phone screen, and then do prepare responses for why Amazon, tell me about yourself, and walk me through your resume. So that will help you to pass your phone screen. But then as you go into your loop, it will be almost entirely behavioral. And indeed, if you step back from the entire Amazon process, you'll end up prepping, in most cases, for the bulk of your time, answering behavioral interview questions. Anything you'd add, Gigi?
Nope, nothing. Right, so I'm going to pick the next one, which will be a quick one. So I'll do 2. Okay, so Timothy again. Okay, so SDE5, most of my interviewers are technical. Should my stories include a good amount of technical details, or if LP part, only worry about behavioral? Okay, so Timothy, you'll know the technical questions from the behavioral questions. They'll be very clearly different. When you're asked technical questions, put in loads of technical detail. When you're asked behavioral questions, talk about your behaviors and how. These two types of questions serve a very different function. If you spout too much about your technical in the behavioral, they won't have gathered enough data on the behavioral, and therefore at debrief everyone's just going to say we don't have enough data to make a decision, so the only decision we can make is no hire. So behavioral, technical. It may well be that your interviewer latches onto something in your behavioral question that is more technical and takes you down that route from a follow-up question point of view, and if they do, fine, go with them. Excuse me, go with them, but avoid making behavioral answers technical answers, because that's not the role of the question. Okay, so now I'm just going to jump on to M, not her. Does the LP assigned to each interviewer depend on their area of expertise or the best LP they identify with? For example, a BA would be more likely to assign dive deep or deliver results. LPs, right. So leadership principles are generally assigned at random. In theory, everybody is supposed to be able to interview on any leadership principle. So they are assigned at random by the recruitment coordinator. Now, on some occasions, somebody is particularly strong at one leadership principle, and the recruitment coordinator might well know that, or the hiring manager might well know that, and therefore specifically request that individual is assigned that leadership principle. But it's very much on an ad hoc basis where an individual is known to be good at a thing, rather than some broader policy that says all lawyers are supposed to get the earn trust leadership principle, all customer service focused people are supposed to get customer obsession, and all analyst people are supposed to get dive deep. It doesn't work like that. I used to get assigned dive deep because it happens to be my favorite leadership principle, and everyone knows that I was pretty strong at it, but I'm not an analyst, I'm a marketer. Okay, I
Cool.
will let you take the next one then.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so there's a question from Niraj. Since a response during behavioral rounds can be attached to different leadership principles, how would I know which LP they are looking for? So, Niraj, it really depends on how you prepared and what resources you used. I can tell you that if you used our paid resources, chances are that I, I would say I'll give it 7 out of 10 questions. You will know what leadership principles they're testing. Um, but even if you don't, even if you go into the interview and you don't, then essentially your job fundamentally during the interview is not trying to work out what leadership principle the question is attached to, but fish out the story from your story bank, wherever it is. If it's here somewhere in databases, in Google Sheets or Post-it notes, you need to fish out the story that does the best job demonstrating behaviors that the question is looking for. Now, if you have prepared well, and thoroughly, and maybe during the preparation indeed you had a guide, like one of the question banks that we invented, where we group questions, example questions, by leadership principle. um, you you might be preparing stories and then tagging them, right, which I know a lot of candidates do. You have a you have a Google spreadsheet, you tag your stories with an LP tag, and then you have an idea of what story kind of is mapped to what, and that's great. But then all that does, the reason why you do this is not so that during the interview time you can work out what leadership principle the story is about. No, it means that you've done so much prep that you don't even need to think about what leadership principle the story is attached to. You just go into your interview, they pop a question, the right story comes comes to you, and you use it to respond to the interview. So that's what we say to all of our candidates. Anything you'd add, Gigi?
Answer the question.
There
If
you
you're
go.
actually answering the question, you are inevitably going to be talking about the right leadership principle. So if the question is, tell me about a time where you had to you had to get someone to cooperate with you who didn't want to cooperate with you. If you're actually answering the question and talking about getting someone's cooperation, then you're going to be talking about the leadership principle, which is earn trust. If someone asks you a question of, tell me about a time where you had to dive deep into many different layers of data in order to root cause a problem, the question is about diving deep into many layers. Well, if you only focus your answer on how you went about diving deep into many layers, you're going to be answering the question, and therefore you're going to be touching on the leadership principle. So to Yevgeny's point, the courses that we do will make sure that you have the right types of answers in the back of your head, so they just come to the front when the question is asked. But ultimately, our candidates will be answering the question because they are so prepared with the right stories in their head that they will be able to answer the question. Okay, so should we just pop Niraj back in? Because I just want to make sure that we just give some time here to congratulate Abdul. So hello, Yevgeny and Gigi. Hi. You'll be starting an L6 at Amazon in 2 weeks. Yay! Thank you for the quality of your information, and you only used our resources and paid community. Abdul, we are all you need in so many ways, or at least that's what I tell my husband anyway. Um, Congratulations. That's just amazing news. And I wish you a fantastic Amazon career. And if you end up interviewing anybody, you just send them our way. Okay, right. Sorry, I just wanted to congratulate Abdul, and let's hop back into the questions. Okay. I'm conscious of time. How long have we got? Oh, we've got like 4 minutes left, Yevgeny. All right, we haven't got
One
that many
question and freebies.
questions. Okay, yeah, question and then freebies. Okay, so let's just see if there's anyone who didn't have a chance to ask a question. Okay, so I'm going to just do this because I'm going to do this person because they haven't had a chance yet. In our experience of interviewing, what do you think or how do you feel about candidates looking at notes? Does this reflect poorly on an answer/story? Could it reflect preparation? Thanks. Okay. So, an Amazon interview is not a memory test. It is an interview to gather data on your previous experience. And if that is the guiding principle, there is no issue with having notes to remind you of important facts and important data points. It is, however, important how you use those notes. You do not want to be sitting at your interview, reading your notes like this and reciting a story that you have clearly just written down and you're just following a script. That is not what they're looking for. But there's nothing wrong with having a brief set of notes in front of you, letting your interviewer know, I do have some notes to keep me on course and make sure I give you accurate data points. I might just look at them once or twice, but I promise you, I will not be reading from them as a script. If you do that, you will be fine. I think I've had one candidate in the thousands of candidates that have passed through our doors, Yevgeny, who has come back and told me that their interviewer told them to put down their notes. Now, that candidate says they weren't reading directly from the notes. Maybe, maybe not. But in all of the thousands of people that we've worked with over the years, that's literally the only person that's ever come back to me and told me their interviewer objected to them having notes. Okay. Do you want to do one more question and then we can do freebies?
Yeah, sure, we can do
I
that.
think we've got the last person on the list there.
Okay. So that would be Anaga. Okay. So can I repeat one or is it one
Two?
or two or one
Yeah, one or
half?
two. I don't think it's a half a story. I think it's one
One
or
or
two
one
stories.
or two stories from the phone interview in the loop if they are really good example. Mm. Um, so our recommendation is yes, you can, but with some caveats. And caveat number one, if during your phone screen you use them for leadership principle A or question, let's say question A, and then during your loop you want to use them for question B, which especially if that question B is probing for a completely different area, right? Different behavioral theme, which should signal to you that it's a question that maps to a different leadership principle than the one that they asked you during the phone screen. Then yes, you can use that story. The only thing is, you need to you almost like need to use the same situation, but you need to change the story, specifically the actions part. Because as you can imagine, if the original question was something about solving complex problems with simple solutions, which is an invent and simplify question. And then during the loop, they asked you, tell me about a time when you needed a cooperation of someone who was resistant to to you. Then it's an earned trust question. Obviously the action, probably not just the actions part, the problem definition, your objectives, your task, and your actions will be quite different, right? But the overall situation could be the same, right? So that's the caveat number one. Caveat number two, mm, if you want to use it for exactly the same question, say someone repeats the same question that they asked you during the phone screen, you can use it, but just let your interviewer know that that a colleague of theirs asked you exactly the same question during the phone screen, and you, unless they guide you otherwise, you'll use the same. You'll use the same story. Um, is it ideal to repeat stories? I'm gonna say no. And the reason why it's not ideal, the reason why we always guide all candidates to squeeze as much content out of yourself as possible, is because for some interviewers and for some bar raisers it's okay that you repeat, but for some bar raisers it isn't. So we generally recommend to avoid repeating content. But if you think it was one of your best sellers and you're struggling with the volume of content, yes, you can, with the caveats that I mentioned. Anything you'd add, Gigi?
Nope, nothing to add. I am going to pick this last question from Timothy because he keeps asking it, and I feel that he's desperate for us to answer it. So I'm just going to do that quickly, and then I'll give you all freebies. So, um, if you have 8 LPs and a 15 to 20 minutes in all 4 interviews, will they be asking more than one story per LP, or should my stories just be longer to fill that time? So if you only, I'm amazed if you're telling me, Timothy, that your interviews are only 15 to 20 minutes long. I've never heard of that before. That seems so little time, but let's just go with it. Let's assume that that is the case for your L5 SDE interview. So I would say, as an L5, if you only had 20 minutes to interview an L5, you're probably only going to get through maybe 2 or 3 questions, I'd say, for an L5. If it was me anyway, I'd probably be, oh, right, the technical part is 50, 45 minutes, right? So they're only allowing 15 minutes for LPs in a full 60-minute interview. Got it. Okay. So I'd say probably, if you're an L5, I don't know, 2 questions, maybe 3 in a 20-minute period of time. And of course, you can drag it out, right, Timothy? If you're trying to get through as few number of questions as possible because you've got a limited number of situations, then sure, you can drag it out. But as an L5, if you were taking like 8 minutes to tell a story as an L5, I would imagine that there would be a whole bunch of waffle in that rather than just the core story and the behaviors itself. But maybe it's a particularly complex story and you're punching well above your weight. But I would say if it was me interviewing an L5 and I only had 20 minutes, I'd probably make it through 2 stories, maybe 3 at max. Would you, what do you think, Evgeny? Do you think you'd be around the same number as me or something different?
Thereabouts.
Right. Okay, cool. So, folks, we're out of time. Do not leave. You will regret it if you leave. So, we have some amazing freebies to give you. So, let me get the right banner up. Where are my banners? Here are my banners. Right, sorry. Here we go, folks. Right. So, from this side to this side, if you follow this URL, folks, at the end of this URL are essentially 3 incredible opportunities that you'd be absolutely insane not to take up. The first is a free course from us. So, the way we teach our major course is we do a massive deconstruction of the leadership principles. You'll have read them, there's lots of nuance in them, there's lots of words. Every single word that's in those leadership principle descriptions has a purpose. What we do when we teach our courses is we effectively deconstruct the leadership principles into the different, what we call facets, but there's basically different versions of the leadership principle. Then we explain to you what your interviewer is looking for in that particular behavior, and then we show you basically a mock interview, me interviewing me. You'd be amazed at my acting skills. We're giving away for free one of our modules, which is our customer obsession module, which pretty much everyone will be tested on through if you get all the way through the Amazon interview process, because it's their most fundamental leadership principle. So you can go and take that, and I promise you it will completely change the way you look at customer obsession. The second thing that we are going to give you is, and Yevgeny referred to it earlier on, is a big list of what we call plausible Amazon interview questions. They are not the Amazon interview questions that are given to Amazonians to ask, because we can't share those with you because that would violate our contracts. So we've come up with our own versions of what could potentially be the types of questions that an Amazonian might ask, looking for insights on particular leadership principles. So you can have that, and it's perfect for practicing on. You won't get this exact word for word question in your Amazon interview, but it will be indicative and really, really good to practice with. And then the third thing that we give you is, if you take either one of those things, you get access to our free community. We have now, I don't know, it's like 2,000 members, maybe more, of
Over
our
3,000 members.
3,000 now. Okay, wow, that's enormous. I didn't realize it was that many. So we have 3,000 members of our community, and they are either currently looking for a job and interviewing at Amazon, or they have historically been through the process. What we enable you to do at that community is make friends, join up forces with other people, and have a buddy, and you can mock interview with each other. You can ask each other questions. We also have an amazing AI bot, a kind of a chat tool, which effectively is the consolidation of all of our YouTube content into a kind of chat GPT model that we've trained. So you can ask that bot almost any question that you have, bar technical ones, about your Amazon interview experience, and the AI coach will effectively be able to answer that question in the same way as Yevgeny and I would be able to answer that question if you asked it of us. Incredible resources, totally free. You will not find those resources on any other channel, through any other organization, to that level of depth, I promise you. And if you can, come and tell us, because then we want to be able to up our game and do even better than they're doing. But I do not believe those types of resources are available anywhere else, and they are totally, totally free. So, with all of that said, we are now done. I am going to have my hot dog. I don't know what's for dinner in your house, Yevgeny. I hope it's something super exciting. And folks, if you have interviews coming up, wish you the very, very best of luck. And we'll see you next week. Yeah? See you, Yevgeny.
Yeah, see you.
Take care. Bye.